Naomi started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law. And they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord just emotional stuff here. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. It's not helpful when the speaker weeps, so I'm going to try to avoid it, but it's very appropriate to weep in this life. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters. It has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord is turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth sang, because I think this is a song. "Do not press me to leave you, or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the 2 of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. What do you do after loss? Massive loss, famine, disease, widowhood, childlessness, failure. Settle for the next best thing, a slightly easier quest, totally understandable. The Lord seems to have considered his people. I'm just going to head back home. May you find security, she says to her 2 daughters-in-law, and she means well. Do you think through the practical considerations? I mean, really, what other option is there? I mean, I'm not have a lot more babies in my womb, even if I had one. You're not going to wait 20 plus years or however long you have to wait in that culture. Like, come on, it's not going to happen. Practically speaking, let's find a way to settle here. But it's not just practicalities, because it's been bitter for me. There's bitterness here. But Ruth clung to her. And reading between the lines, Naomi, who when she gets back to Bethlehem, changes her name to Mara, which means bitter, and who never speaks in the opening acts of this story a word that's positive about her God. Probably not an easy person to cling to. But Ruth clings to her and sings this incredible song. What are you called to cling to? What are you called to cling to? Who are you called to cling to? What was the original vision that launched you on this journey, the one that now seems unattainable? What are people urging you with practical considerations and more than a hit of bitterness to discard? Kiss that hope goodbye. What has failure taught you not to hope for? What has failure taught you to ethically settle for? Because Orpah, there's nothing in the text that says Orpah does anything wrong. Her mother-in-law is pleading with her to go back to her own people, her own context, find a new secure life there. And Orpah finally gives in. There's nothing wrong in what she does. There's love between these women. She kisses her mother-in-law, but it's a farewell and it's appropriate, right? But it's not always failure that does this, that causes us to decide, I think it's time to head to the safe place. Success does the same thing in the end. The cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches, the lure of other things, and somehow that good quest doesn't seem quite as urgent. Soul, you have built up enough for many a year. Build large bonds. Acquire advisors to help you with capital preservation. Eat, drink, be merry. Have another glass at the marriage. Be satisfied, the rich man says to his soul. Be satisfied. I'm haunted by two characters in the book of Ruth who get very little attention in the book itself, and less probably from our reading of it and our teaching on it. So this daughter-in-law, Orpah, who does the ethical thing and steps out of the story. I don't know what happened to Orpah. Hopefully she did find security. But she steps out of the story and Ruth steps into the story. And Orpah to me is the embodiment of the ethical actor. No judgment. And truly, I'm not here all these thousands of years later to pass judgment on her. How many of us would have done the same thing? It's just that she misses out on what turns out to be quite an amazing story. And it's the difference between the ethical and the redemptive, right? Neither Ruth nor Orpah has any obligation to leave her home and go with her mother-in-law. And Orpah takes the ethical way, but Ruth takes the redemptive way. The other person I'm haunted by doesn't even get a name in the story. Because this very interesting little twist in this story, which is it's a story of the invocation of levirate marriage, which is a very fancy way to show you that I know things that you don't know, and establish my credential as a speaker, in which there was a responsibility under the law for the next of kin, if a man died, to take on that man's line and his lineage through marriage in order that the name of the dead man would not be lost, and that really the family would be kept together. And of course, we all think of Boaz as the person who steps into that role, but the really interesting thing is Boaz is not the ethical redeemer. He has no obligation under the law to do this. There's another guy who is legally required to do it. And when Boaz falls in love with Ruth and falls in love in a way with her mother-in-law and with their plight and the possibility of redeeming them, he gets so excited. He's like, well, hold on, there's one, I have to go get this deal done. And he goes to the gate of the city. The other guy's sitting there. He's like, well, you know, the land of Elimelech has come up for levirate adoption, you might say. And the guy says, great, I'll take it. And then Boaz says, well, it comes with Ruth the Moabite. And the guy says, I would rather not take it. And Boaz says, that's the answer I was looking for. Give me your sandal. And he makes the deal. And that guy exits off the stage of history without having done anything wrong, though you can imagine him wiping the sweat off his brow. Like, whoo, I'm good. I had good legal advice. And fortunately, my counterpart in the deal was willing to make a deal. And I just slipped out. No violation of Torah. No big problems for me, no Moabite wife. And off the stage he goes, and if you make the movie, he and Orpah are played by these kind of second-rate actors, and Ruth and Boaz are like really impressive, charismatic people. But in the story itself, the only difference is one person decides, I'm not just going to do the ethical thing. And their life goes on into the pages of the Bible. And the other person ethically departs, and they just aren't part of the story. So there's a lot of ethical exit ramps, and you can take them. You just miss out on the next chapter. And I want to meddle a little bit here and say, I think we could do this at Praxis. We could take a very subtle ethical exit ramp over time. Say to our soul, I'm not referring to the e-reader here, that you have done very well. $191 million in capital placed, or whatever it is. 6,300 jobs, 91% survival rate. Let's try to keep that number up, right? And we could start taking ethical exit ramps because, frankly, a lot of what we do in the world that we call redemptive, actually our neighbors in the world is going to say, oh, you're so ethical. And over time, we'll come to believe it. This is because we're good people. We've done good things. But as we do that, we will subtly start to neglect the broader redemptive story that we're invited into. Here's the meddling part. 2 examples. We have worked so truly diligently, prayed, and sought friends who could help this room become more diverse ethnically than it was a few years ago. And praise God for the nations, races, tribes, tongues, people who are in this room. Everyone in this room is a gift to us. And in the diversity of this room, as it's grown, it's so good. And it's such a blessing to this community and through this community to the world. And it's been good. But there are organizations that can just sort of ethically say, oh, I think we're diverse enough now. Feels reasonably diverse. We can get photos with many hues. And then you are totally taking a little ethical off-ramp from the history of theft of wealth and truth and power that has made so much of our world, and you're settling for a kind of ethical, kind of minimum viable product instead of acting to redeem and repair and step into the terrible, torn legacy of how wealth has been built throughout all of history by many peoples in many places. But we could just be satisfied. We're an expression of a certain stream of American Christianity. And gosh, it's so encouraging to be in this room because it just feels like some of the craziness of American Christianity, maybe it's here, but you all hide it very well. Right? It's so encouraging. I feel like I get to live, except when I go on Twitter, I think things are going great in the kingdom of God, right? Because I live every day in Praxis world, and truly, this is so encouraging. It is, and it is real. But we could be satisfied. But there are 40 million, so they say, 40 million young people who are likely to disaffiliate from the faith between now and in the next 10 years because they don't see this. And they don't know that this is possible or that there's a community where this kind of crazy is normal. And are we going to just be satisfied to segregate ourselves off from the messy reality? And of course, I'm so grateful for the true diversity of this room, but I'm just speaking of this part of American Christianity that is so entwined with nationalism, so captive to consumerism, so empty of true spiritual power, so mediocre in its ambition and its humility. And are we not going to step in and lament and repent and think about what do we have to offer that could actually be part of a redemptive story for this messy thing that is mainstream, dominant culture American Christianity that didn't have to be this way, doesn't have to be this way, but we could decide, well, we're just doing a beautiful ethical thing in our 400-person room. Ethical does not repair. Ethical steps out of the story that matters most. But Ruth and Boaz commit to deep change. Ruth and Boaz. A couple people have asked me this week, it's a common understandable question. In Praxis' view, can non-Christians act redemptively? I'm like, let me tell you about a Moabite woman. Yeah, absolutely. What it takes to act redemptively is to implicate yourself in a situation of failure in the life of a person not easy to love and cling to them and sing this incredible song. A couple comments about this equation. The value of tea. How much tea do you need for this to work? I think my answer to that is more time than you have. 3 generations, probably minimum value. God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When God is really working to change the world, the book of Genesis, 3 generations plus 1, the generation of Joseph and his brothers also. More time than we've got. You'll be lucky very, very lucky to meet that little that great grandbaby. And that'll be the end, and that's just the beginning of anything you really want to call lasting change. Now, if you have a 10-year fund you're running, you got a 10-year fund. You got to pay it back. So pray and work and deliver the returns as best as you can. If you have a book deadline, not that I've ever met anyone who had one of those, it's coming up. Get it done. There's a time for impact. There's a time for deliverables. There's a time to ship. But these impact cycles, where we work very hard on a focused goal, kind of muster the F we can, shrink the T as much as we can in order to deliver, have to be embedded in a longer cycle of I equals F to the T. The redemptive quest goes beyond the impact cycle. And it's a horizon beyond our own agency that calls us into faith. Peter Greer says the test of a CEO's performance comes 2 years after the CEO's departure. You cannot evaluate a CEO until 2 years after they leave. And I would actually say, in some ways, the test of a venture builder comes in 2 generations of leadership after your departure. If you started the thing, I don't really know how to evaluate your thing until 2 generations later. We have to be committed to something deeper than our venture. If you are solely committed to your venture, it's probably your idol. What do you feel about your competitors who do things better than you do them? If you care about the redemptive quest, it's actually great news to have that kind of competitor. What do you care about your successors who will do things better than you do in the future? If it's your idol, you're going to want to stamp them out. I think there's a whole story about this being told on HBO or something. But if you have a redemptive quest vision, successors actually matter more than you. Spin out organizations who will do aspects of your work better than you do them. They actually become essential, right? So we got to have a long T, a lot of actors, and then what's the F? I'm short on time this morning, so I'll just, I'm supposed to build up to this and make it really dramatic and make you guess what the F is for. Because of course, kind of initially I was thinking the F is for force, just to force over time or compounded over time. But I've really, really come to believe the F is for friendship in this equation. That's the thing that compounds. That's the thing that delivers more and more. That's the thing that starts out small, but ends up really, really dramatically big. And sandwiched in between the book of Judges, which is about the political calamity of the collapse of God's people after they've entered the land, between that book and between Samuel Kings, which is the story of the gradual restoration of a kind of sacred order that recovers some of that calling. Sandwiched between these 2 books in the Hebrew Bible is a book named Friend. Because Ruth is the Hebrew word, friend. Her name is friend. Where you're going, I'm going. Where you're lodging, I'm lodging. Friendship is deeper than a cause. You will not sustain commitment to a cause through either failure or success, actually. You succeed at the cause, people start to speak very well of you, and it becomes about your power, your image, all that stuff. You definitely won't stay sticking with the cause through failure, deep failure. But the right kind of friends stick it out. They keep going. They just don't stop calling each other to what they know the other is capable of. Friendship makes room for time and for risk. I have no longer called you servants. I've called you friends. Boaz said to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, to be my wife, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his kindred and from the gate of his native place. Today you are the witnesses." Now, as I read that, I don't think it sounds that exciting. It's sort of legal. This is like a contractual legal thing. But let me just call attention to something. He names the dead. And what's really interesting, he names Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, the line that he's taking over. He names the sons-in-law who were Moabite guys. Well, they married Moabite women. They married into Moab. They went off. They left. He brings them back and says, all of these names, they're not forgotten. I mean, death is a kind of failure. And he's like, but the name is not being cut off. We're not forgetting. But then listen to this. Then all the people who are at the gate, they sing a song back to him. Along with the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you produce children in Ephrathah and bestow a name in Bethlehem. And through the children that the Lord will give you by this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Wow. The house of Perez. Doesn't that just move you? You're all like, we have no idea who this is. This is the weirdest blessing in the Bible because it refers back to one of the weirdest stories in the Bible that is not in the Jesus Storybook Bible. The story of Judah and Tamar, Judah, her father-in-law, if I'm remembering it right. It's very messy. It's sort of icky. It involves unnatural acts. It's really, really a messy story in which a series of men fail to live up to their obligations to the women who deserve to be honored and cared for by them. Judah fails. Her husband fails. The guy who's supposed to take over the role of the husband pulls out at the last minute. Let's just say there are some Jesus Story Bible readers in the room. We're not explaining this further for them. Tamar's like, I am getting a baby because I deserve a baby. It is my right to have a baby by these men. And she disguises herself. We're going to leave some of the details up to the imaginations of those more imaginative in the room. And it is the most messy, yucky story of failure of covenant love, manipulation when you don't have any other option. And by the way, nothing in the text judges Tamar. They're like, she's righteous. But these guys, they are a mess. And that's Boaz's great-great-great-grandfather, Perez, the son of that union between Judah and Tamar. Boaz has inherited a mess. But the people bless him, and they say, you are redeeming the mess. You have been faithful. You've stepped in and kept covenant when you didn't even have to. You've shown loving kindness when no one else would, when it wasn't ethically required. You have undone, you've re-knit this multi-generational kind of history of shame and failure. So have we. Inherited a multi-generational history of shame and failure. But we can act to restore if we don't take the ethical exit. We are in this for the restoration of all things, deep change. Do we want to be part of that? Where you're going, I'm going. Where you're lodging, I'm lodging. Su casa, mi casa. Your people, my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I die. Where you're buried, I'll be buried. And may the Lord ever so much mess me up if I don't live up to this. That's what Ruth sings. And Jesus sings this song to us. But then he keeps singing. You know, Ruth lives in the Hebrew Bible. She's not a Christian. She doesn't know the hope of resurrection after the dead. She's just going to stay faithful until death. That is the virtue of the Hebrew Bible, faithful until death. But Jesus sings that song, does that whole thing, and then he keeps singing. And what does he sing? When I rise, you will rise. Where I am going, you too will be. You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. I go to prepare a place for you. Have I not told you? In my Father's house are many mansions. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God.